The night sky over the alien moon felt heavier than any sky Elias Ward had ever seen, its clouds rolling like dark waves swallowing what little light tried to break through. And he walked alone across the cracked stone plain with the silent confidence of a man who had survived too many hunts to fear the darkness. His step steady, his breathing calm, his senses sharp like blades. Far behind him, strange storm winds howled through the broken canyons, carrying the distant cries of creatures that hunted in shadows. But Elias did not turn back. He simply adjusted the strap of the worn pack on his shoulder and kept moving. Because on this moon, hesitation meant death, and he had learned long ago that fear only slowed the feet. He reached the edge of a deep canyon where sharp rocks glowed faintly under bursts of electric blue lightning, and at the bottom he saw a cluster of alien warriors gathered around small flickering lights, their silhouettes tall and armored, their movement tense like animals sensing danger. Elias narrowed his eyes, recognizing their war markings. He knew this species was fierce, proud, and not always friendly toward humans, but the storm above thundered closer, and staying exposed meant risking being torn apart by the creatures that came out during weather like this. So he climbed down with the quiet grace of a man who understood the land better than he understood people. The moment his boots touched the ground, several alien warriors lifted their spears toward him, their eyes glowing with threat. But one gesture from their leader made them pause, and Elias felt their gazes study him with confusion and suspicion. Yet none of this bothered him. He simply nodded once and stepped back from the firelight, choosing a shadowed corner where he could rest without disturbing them. Among the aliens stood one figure unlike the rest, taller, stronger, with silver skin that shimmered under the storm flashes. Her long dark braids swayed like living vines, and her golden eyes locked onto Elias the moment he entered the camp. She didn't speak, but he felt her presence like a flame burning through the cold, inquisitive, sharp, almost predatory. She was a huntress of her people, one of the elite, and the way she looked at him made it clear she did not understand how a lone human had reached such a dangerous place alive. The storm suddenly split the sky open with a roar, and the canyon trembled under the vibrations, dust falling from the jagged walls. The aliens braced themselves, and Elias could feel something else moving out in the dark. A sound he recognized instantly, a low rumbling growl that rolled across the ground like a warning. The alien warriors formed a defensive circle around their fire, gripping their weapons tightly. One shouted something in their harsh tongue, pointing toward the shadows beyond the canyon wall, and Elias listened, tuning his ears to the rhythm of the sound. He had heard it before, years ago, when a beast the size of a small house had ambushed his unit and wiped out everyone except him. The memory struck like a cold spike through his chest, but instead of fear, it sharpened him. Then the creature appeared, massive and armored, its 6 glowing eyes scanning the canyon as it crawled forward on sharp claws that sliced through stone, its breath smoky and hot, every exhale echoing like a furnace waking. The aliens shouted battle cries and prepared to charge, but Elias stepped forward before they could, his knife already in his hand, his movements quiet and calculated. Vena, the huntress, watched him closely, her expression unreadable, and she felt something strange stir inside her. Humans were not supposed to stand in front of beasts like this. They were supposed to flee or hide or die quickly. But this one didn't flinch, he didn't hesitate. He simply looked at the creature the way predators looked at prey. The beast lunged, the canyon shaking under its weight. And in that explosive moment the aliens froze for half a breath. But Elias did not. He moved, faster than their eyes could follow, rolling under its swinging claws, slicing deep across the joint of its limb, forcing it to stumble, roaring in fury. He dodged again, climbing onto its back with the agility of a seasoned soldier, stabbing between armored plates with precise force, again and again, hitting the same point until the knife sank. Deeper, the beast thrashed, crashing into the canyon wall, sending shards of rock raining down. But Elias held on, driving the blade toward the creature's spine until its legs trembled and finally collapsed, dust exploding around them as the massive body fell still, its glowing eyes dimming slowly. Silence filled the canyon, heavy and stunned. The alien warriors stared at the dead beast in disbelief, some whispering in shock, others stepping back, unable to accept that a single human had done what usually required 5 of their best hunters. Vena stepped forward, her eyes fixed on Elias, who stood beside the fallen creature breathing slowly, wiping blood from his face. He didn't boast, didn't gloat, didn't even seem proud. He just looked at the beast with a quiet sadness, as if this was simply another task he had survived, and nothing more. Vena felt her heart pound in a way she had never felt before. A strange pull she could not fight, because she had seen countless warriors, countless challengers, but never had she witnessed anyone move with such instinct, precision, and quiet strength. Something inside her whispered a dangerous truth. This human was no ordinary man. This human was a hunter unlike any she had ever known. And as the storm rumbled above them and Elias walked past her without a word, she found herself following him with her eyes, unable to look away, her breath trembling softly as a single thought settled deep in her heart like fate. She needed to know more about him, needed to see him fight again, needed to understand why her instincts reacted to him with such fierce certainty. Even though she didn't yet realize that this moment, this night, this kill, was the beginning of a story that would change both their lives forever. The morning rose slowly over the canyon, painting the broken rocks with a cold silver glow as if the world itself was still unsure whether it had survived the night, and Elias stood at the edge of the cliffs preparing to leave long before the alien warriors even woke. His movements quiet, steady, almost invisible, because he never liked staying in one place longer than necessary. But Vena was awake too, standing a few steps behind him, her arms crossed, her golden eyes studying him with the same sharp intensity she had shown the night before, and Elias felt her presence even without turning, like a warm flame flickering behind his back, curious, strange, and impossible to ignore. "You move before the sun breathes," she said softly, her voice carrying the rough music of her people's tongue, and Elias only nodded, pulling the strap of his pack tighter as he checked the path ahead, the land stretching into a long corridor of jagged stone and tangled roots, a place where danger lived in every shadow. The other warriors finally stirred, their armor clinking as they rose, whispering about the human who had killed the beast alone. Some glanced at him with respect, others with fear, a few with envy. But Vena didn't look away from him. She walked closer, her steps strong and purposeful, her expression unreadable. "You will not stay with us," she said. Not a question but an observation, and Elias shrugged lightly, staring at the cliffs glowing under the rising sun. Because he had never belonged to groups, never trusted crowds, never needed anyone's shelter or favor. "Storm's over," he replied quietly. "I move on." Vena tilted her head like a predator trying to understand new prey, her braids falling over her shoulder, the silver patterns on her skin shimmering as the light touched them. "You walk alone in a land made for death," she murmured. "Most humans fear this moon, yet you treat it like it is your own home." Elias didn't answer, but something in his eyes flickered, a small shadow of memory, a pain buried deep under the calm surface of his face. Vena saw it, and it sparked a curiosity inside her sharp enough to cut. They began walking together despite Elias's silence, the alien group trailing behind them in a rough formation. And soon the canyon led into a dense forest of twisted trees whose branches curled like claws toward the sky, every rustle carrying the breath of hidden creatures, every root hiding venomous life. Vena walked beside him, matching his pace, her spear held with casual ease, but her attention was on him, watching how he scanned every shadow, every sound, every movement. "Your hunting sense," she said softly. "It is too sharp for a regular human soldier." Elias kept his eyes forward, but Vena saw a small muscle tighten in his jaw, a sign she had hit a nerve. "I learned from experience," he said. "More experience than I wanted." There was weight in his voice, a quiet heaviness that told her there were ghosts walking behind him. Ghosts he didn't talk about, ghosts he didn't want to remember. And she felt something unexpected stir in her chest, a soft ache, a strange pull toward understanding him more. They reached a small river that split the forest in two, the water dark and cold, the air heavy with the scent of minerals and hidden danger. Elias crouched down and touched the surface, feeling the current, sensing the direction of the land, while Vena watched him with growing fascination. "You hunt like us?" she said after a moment. "You think like us too?" He didn't respond, but when he rose, she stepped in front of him, blocking his path just enough to make him stop, her golden eyes glowing under the dim light. "Tell me how you survived here alone," she demanded, not with anger, but with fierce curiosity. Tell me why your fear is so quiet." Before Elias could reply, a low rustle echoed from the bushes across the river. A sound too large, too heavy to belong to any small animal, and both of them immediately shifted into defensive stances, their instincts snapping to attention. The alien warriors behind them lifted their weapons, whispering warnings, the forest suddenly feeling smaller, darker, tighter, like something enormous was breathing just beyond the trees. Elias raised one hand slightly, signaling everyone to stay still, and Vena noticed how even the warriors obeyed him without thinking, as if his calm carried more authority than their leader's orders. The rustle grew louder, then stopped, the silence turning sharp, violent, almost crushing. Elias's eyes scanned the treeline, reading every leaf, every shadow, every unnatural shift in the air, and slowly he reached for the curved blade at his side. Vena stepped closer to him, her shoulder brushing against his arm, her voice a low whisper. "What is it?" Elias inhaled slowly, sensing the pattern of movement he remembered from many hunts before. Then he exhaled, his voice steady. "Something fast," he said, "and something hungry." The branches exploded outward as a reptilian predator burst through the trees, its long body snapping with needle teeth, diving straight toward the alien warriors, and chaos erupted instantly. Elias moved first, sprinting toward the beast with a speed that shocked everyone. He leaped onto a fallen trunk and launched himself upward, slashing across the creature's throat in one clean motion, sending dark blood spraying across the forest floor. The beast shrieked, twisting violently, and Vena joined him, driving her spear through its spine with perfect aim. Together they brought it crashing down, their breaths heavy, their bodies close, their movements synced as if they had trained for years. The alien warriors stared again, stunned, whispering in disbelief, some looking at Elias with awe, others with fear. But Vena didn't look away from him, her heart hammering in a strange rhythm she didn't recognize. And in her voice there was a softness she had never used before. "You fought beside me like we were one," she whispered. "Why does that feel like destiny?" Elias didn't answer, but the way he looked at her, calm and steady, made her feel something deep in her bones, something ancient, something dangerous. And as they stood over the fallen predator with the forest still trembling around them, Vena understood one truth she could no longer deny. This human did not just survive the wild, he belonged to it, and something inside her wanted to follow him wherever he went, no matter how far, no matter how dangerous, because for the first time in her life, her warrior instincts whispered a word she had never applied to anyone before: mate. The forest grew darker as they moved deeper, the air thick with the scent of wet earth and drifting pollen, and every step felt like walking into a place where time held its breath, waiting to see what would happen between the human hunter and the alien huntress walking side by side. Their silence filled with questions neither of them was brave enough to ask yet. Elias walked with his eyes scanning the shadows, one hand always near his blade, his posture calm but alert, while Vena kept close to him, her movements smooth and quiet like a predator matching the rhythm of another predator. And though she tried to appear composed, her golden eyes kept drifting toward him, studying the way he breathed, the way he noticed things before anyone else did, the way his instincts reacted a heartbeat before danger took shape. They reached a narrow ravine where tall stone pillars twisted toward the sky like ancient bones, and the alien warriors hesitated, whispering that the place was cursed, that the land itself ate those who walked too boldly. But Elias stepped forward without fear, touching the stone with slow, careful fingers as if he could read its warnings through texture alone. Vena watched him with growing fascination, her voice low when she finally spoke. "You act like you have seen all this before." Elias didn't look at her, his eyes tracing faint claw marks in the stone, reading them like old memories carved into earth. "I've walked through places worse than this," he said quietly, and for a moment his voice carried a pain she didn't understand, a pain he tried to hide but couldn't mask from her senses. She stepped closer to him, her height casting part of his face in shadow as she asked, "Who taught you to survive like this?" Elias paused, the air around him shifting with something heavy, something personal, and when he finally answered, his voice was almost a whisper. "No one stayed long enough to teach me anything." The way he said it made Vena's chest tighten with a strange ache, as if she could feel the loneliness wrapped around those words. Even the land seemed to watch them with wary curiosity. A cold wind swept through the trees, carrying a scent that made both Elias and Vena stop at the same moment, their heads turning slowly toward the thicker part of the forest, every sense sharpening like drawn blades, and without a word Elias stepped slightly in front of her, while Vena took a step closer to his side, their bodies aligning in perfect instinctive harmony. "There's something ahead," Elias whispered, his voice low and steady, and Vena felt that same strange warmth in her chest, the warmth that came whenever he spoke with that quiet certainty. "Yes," she breathed. "But it is hiding its breath, it watches us." They moved carefully, entering a narrow valley where long vines hung like silent serpents and ancient stones rose from the ground like the ribs of a dead titan. The air thick with tension, every shadow shifting with secrets, and the deeper they walked the more Vena felt her heart pounding with a new kind of fear. A fear not for herself but for the human walking beside her. Finally they reached a clearing where the trees opened like a broken gate, and in the center of the ground they found deep claw marks carved into the earth, long, jagged, and fresh, the scent of blood lingering in the air. Elias crouched to examine them, his fingers brushing the grooves with gentle precision, while Vena knelt beside him, her eyes glowing softly. "This is no wandering beast," Elias said quietly, his voice carrying the weight of experience. "No," Vena agreed, her voice tightening. "This is the dread maw. It hunts territories in cycles. It should not be here, not now." Elias looked up at her, his eyes steady. Then something pushed it out of its pattern. Vena felt a shiver run down her spine, because he was right. Nothing disturbed the dread maw unless something far worse was moving across the land, and before she could speak, the forest trembled with a low, distant roar. A sound so deep it vibrated through their bones like a warning from the earth itself. The alien warriors behind them panicked, gripping their weapons tighter, stepping back as fear cracked through their composure. But Vena didn't move. She kept her eyes on Elias, feeling the storm inside her growing stronger, feeling something fierce and protective rise in her chest. "You will face it if it comes," she said quietly, not as a question but as a painful truth she already knew. Elias didn't deny it. He simply lowered his gaze back to the ground, pressing his palm gently against the soil as if listening to the heartbeat of the land. "I don't run," he said softly. "Not anymore." His words cut through her like a blade dipped in sorrow, and she stepped closer, so close she could feel the warmth of his skin, her voice trembling for the first time since he met her. "You fight like your life has already been taken from you once," she whispered. "And you walk like a ghost searching for a place to rest." Elias froze, the air thickening between them, and for a moment Vena wondered if she had gone too far, if she had touched a wound he never allowed anyone to see. But then he exhaled slowly, his eyes dark with memories he couldn't hide from her. "Maybe," he murmured, "but this place keeps me alive." She wanted to reach out, to touch the scar along his arm, to feel the story written in his skin. But her people did not show tenderness easily, and her hand stopped halfway, trembling in a way that betrayed her feelings more than any words could. The roar came again, closer this time, shaking leaves from the branches, sending small creatures fleeing in every direction, and the alien warriors fell into formation. Their fear thick but controlled, their trust in Elias and Vena growing with every step. Elias rose to his feet and looked at Vena, his face calm despite the approaching threat. "We need a plan," he said. Vena nodded, her breath shaky but her mind sharp. "There is a ravine ahead, narrow and steep. The dread maw cannot turn easily in confined space. If we lure it there, we can strike its spine." Elias listened, then added quietly, "I'll draw it in." Her heart clenched painfully. "No," she said with sudden sharpness. "You will not be the bait." Elias looked at her with a small, almost tired smile. "I'm fast enough." Vena stepped forward until her chest brushed his, her golden eyes burning with fierce emotion. "You are not just a warrior," she whispered, her voice breaking. "You are a rare hunter, a man my instincts recognize, a man worthy of legacy. I will not let you fall." Elias stared at her, stunned by the intensity in her words, by the emotion she allowed herself to show. And for the first time he felt something warm and terrifying unfold inside him. A feeling he had buried for many years, but before he could speak, the forest floor shook violently, dust rising in small clouds as the dread maw broke through the outer trees with a roar that echoed. An emptiness that had shaped him more than any weapon or battle ever could. And she found herself wanting to know the ghosts he walked with, the memories he never spoke about. Before she could say anything, a sharp metallic sound echoed from the upper ridges, a quick clicking rhythm that made the alien warriors tense immediately. Because they knew that sound, they knew it belonged to something intelligent, something dangerous, something hunting them from the cliffs above. Elias heard it too. His eyes snapping upward, his muscles tensing, and without thinking Vena positioned herself beside him. Their bodies aligning like two blades forged from the same fire, two instincts reacting in perfect harmony. The clicking grew louder, faster, crawling across the rocks like a whisper of metal teeth, and the warriors formed a protective circle. Their spears lifted, but Elias stepped outside the formation, moving toward the sound with slow, deliberate steps. "Stay behind me," he murmured. And even though Vena was stronger, larger, and trained to lead, she obeyed him without argument, something deep inside her recognizing that his instinct was sharper than her pride. From the cliff edge, a creature unfolded its limbs like a nightmare of armor and bone. A long, pale body covered in thin plates, its eyes black and reflective, its movement both intelligent and hungry, the kind of predator that killed not for survival but for sport. The alien warriors trembled, dozens of stories whispered in their culture about this creature. The Shadow Ripper, a hunter that stalked entire tribes until not a single voice was left alive. But Elias didn't step backward. He simply exhaled and loosened his shoulders, his face calm like someone greeting an old enemy. The creature leaped from the cliff, its claws slicing the air, and Vena felt her breath freeze. But Elias moved with impossible timing, pulling her with him as he rolled across the ground, the beast crashing into the stone where they had stood a heartbeat earlier, sending shards flying like shrapnel. Vena rose with a snarl, her spear ready, and Elias stood beside her, blood dripping from a cut along his arm but his posture steady, unbroken, defiant. They attacked together, their movements synchronized, her spear striking low while his blade struck high, her strength complementing his speed, his precision guiding her power, and the creature shrieked as their blows landed with brutal harmony. At one point the beast pinned Vena against a rock, its jaws snapping inches from her throat. But before she could push it off, Elias slammed into its side with raw force, his blade cutting deep into its neck, saving her with a fierceness that made her breath tremble. When the creature finally collapsed, its lifeless body twitching, the forest fell silent again, the only sound their heavy breathing mixing with the distant rustling of restless leaves. Vena looked at Elias, her heart hammering in her chest, her throat tight with something she didn't have a word for. And for the first time she spoke without the tone of a warrior, without pride or sharpness. "You risked yourself for me?" she whispered, her voice softer than moonlight. "Why?" Elias wiped blood from his hand, his eyes meeting hers with a calm she found overwhelming. "Because you would have done the same," he said simply, and she felt those words cut deep into her bones, deeper than any blade could reach. The alien warriors were silent, watching them with wide eyes, understanding something unspoken was forming between the human and the huntress, something rare, something dangerous, something forbidden in many cultures. And as they began walking again through the quiet ravine, Vena walked closer to Elias than before, their arms brushing sometimes, their footsteps matching, their breaths aligning, and deep in her chest her warrior instincts whispered a truth she could no longer ignore. This human was changing her, pulling her toward him, binding her to him in a way she couldn't fight, and every moment beside him made the bond stronger, heavier, more certain. She didn't understand it yet, but she could feel destiny circling them like a silent shadow, waiting for the moment when it would reveal the path neither of them could escape. The sky darkened long before evening arrived, the clouds rolling in like a silent army preparing for war. And as the light faded across the twisted forest, Elias and Vena walked together with a quiet tension growing between them. A tension made of unspoken thoughts, hidden fears, and the strange bond forming in every step they shared. The alien warriors followed them at a distance, whispering among themselves, casting glances that carried both awe and unease, because they had seen what these two could do together. They had watched the human move with impossible instinct and watched their huntress fight beside him as if their souls recognized each other before their minds did. And now, across the sky like thunder made of hunger, and in that explosive moment, with death charging toward them and destiny tightening around their hearts like an unbreakable chain, Vena grabbed Elias's arm and whispered the words her people never spoke lightly, words that sealed fate. "Fight beside me, human, not ahead of me." And Elias nodded, his breath steady as he stepped toward the beast. The bond between them now undeniable, powerful, and impossible to escape. The ground trembled beneath their feet as the dread maw tore through the trees, its massive body ripping ancient roots from the earth, its roar shaking the air like a living storm. And for a moment everything froze, the forest holding its breath as Elias and Vena stepped forward together. Two hunters facing a monster that could swallow them whole without breaking rhythm. The alien warriors stumbled back in panic, their voices sharp with fear, but Elias didn't move. He stood tall and calm, gripping his blade with steady hands, while Vena lowered her stance beside him. Her golden eyes glowing with a fierce light that burned brighter every second the beast drew closer. The dread maw charged, its armored scales scraping the ground, its jaws opening wide enough to crush a boulder. And Elias sprinted to the right with incredible speed, drawing its focus away from the others, leaving deep tracks in the soft earth as he moved like a shadow slipping through battle. "Elias?" Vena shouted, her voice sharp with fear she had never felt for anyone before. "Do not get caught." He didn't answer, but the way he looked back at her for a single heartbeat, steady and unafraid, said everything. He trusted her. And that trust made her chest ache with a feeling so powerful she almost forgot the beast in front of them. The monster slammed into the ground where Elias had been a moment before, sending a shockwave of dirt and broken wood flying in all directions, and he used that moment to leap onto its back, his blade slashing between thick plates of armor, sparks flying with every strike as he searched for the soft gap he remembered from old hunts long past. Vena moved too, charging forward with a roar, her spear cutting through the air as she struck the beast's side, driving the sharpened tip deep into its flesh. The dread maw screamed, twisting violently, throwing Elias off its back and sending him crashing into a tree with a painful thud that stole the breath from his lungs. Vena's heart dropped, rage burning through her veins as she ran to his side, her fingers brushing his arm with a gentleness no one had ever seen from her. But before she could speak, Elias forced himself up, pain tightening his jaw, his eyes blazing with the kind of determination that made even monsters hesitate. "I'm fine," he breathed, though the blood running down his ribs told another story. "Finish it." But Vena shook her head, her voice low and trembling. "Not without you." The beast roared again, charging toward them, and instinct took over. Vena pushed Elias aside and spun around with a wild, precise motion, her spear slicing through the creature's jaw as it lunged. But the dread maw fought with terrifying strength, knocking her to the ground and pinning her with its massive claw. Elias's heart slammed against his ribs, something fierce and primal rising inside him. Something he hadn't felt in years, a fear of losing something he didn't even know he needed until this moment. And he sprinted toward them with a burst of strength his body shouldn't have had, climbing the beast's limb and driving his blade deep behind its skull. Twisting with all the force he had left, the beast shuddered violently, its muscles spasming, its roar breaking into a choking gasp, and slowly the massive creature collapsed, its weight crushing the roots beneath it as the life drained from its eyes. Elias slid down its back, landing beside Vena, his chest heaving, his arm bleeding, his legs trembling from exhaustion, and Vena sat up slowly, her breath unsteady, her eyes locked onto him with an emotion raw enough to break steel. "You saved me," she whispered, her voice fragile in a way he had never heard from her. "You risked everything for me." Elias wiped blood from his face, offering her a tired but soft smile. "You would have done the same." Vena's fingers brushed his cheek without thinking, a tender movement that even she didn't understand fully. "I cannot lose you," she whispered, her voice trembling. "My instincts scream it. My heart screams it." You are… She stopped herself, overwhelmed by the words pressing against her throat. Elias looked at her quietly, the faintest warmth flickering in his eyes. A warmth he had buried for years. A warmth that now rose because of her. Vena? He breathed softly, as if her name itself could steady him, but before either of them could speak again, his knees buckled, the world spinning as blood loss caught up with him, and he collapsed against. With steady, fearless eyes. He is a hunter stronger than most. He faces death with quiet heart. He protects without hesitation. He does not run. He does not break, and my instincts know what that means. The elder's eyes narrowed. Then let him prove it. Silence spread through the camp like cold water. Elias pushed himself up despite the pain. His voice rough but controlled. Prove what? The matriarch turned toward him, her expression unreadable. Prove that you deserve what she believes. Warriors stepped forward, forming a circle, their weapons shining under the moonlight. The trials of honor. One whispered, terrified. No outsider survives them. Vena's breath hitched, her hand clutching Elias's wrist as if trying to anchor him to life itself. You cannot, she whispered, desperation seeping into her voice. You are wounded. They will kill you. Elias looked at her, his eyes filled with a quiet fire that had nothing to do with pride or challenge. His voice soft, steady, painful. I don't want to fight them. Her heart twisted painfully. Then don't. But, he whispered, brushing his thumb weakly across her hand. I won't let them take you from me. The world seemed to stop, the air turning warm for a moment, heavy with the truth they had both been dancing around since the night they first fought together. Before Vena could speak, the elder raised her hand. If the human survives the trials, he will be accepted. And if he does not, another warrior whispered darkly, his blood will stain this ground. Vena stepped in front of Elias, her voice breaking. If he bleeds, we all bleed. Do you not see what he is? Do you not feel it? But tradition was older than mercy, and the matriarch's answer was final. Prepare the arena. Elias tried to stand, pain shaking his body, but Vena caught him, her forehead pressing against his in a trembling moment of quiet desperation. You do not have to prove anything to them, she whispered, her breath warm against his lips, her voice raw. You have already proven everything to me. But Elias only closed his eyes and murmured, I won't let them hurt you. And as the clan dragged them toward the place where fate would test the strength of a wounded man against the laws of an ancient people, Vena felt her heart splitting, torn between tradition and the human she could no longer imagine losing, because a part of her already knew the truth. If Elias died in the arena, a piece of her soul would die with him. The arena was carved into the heart of an ancient crater, its stone walls rising like the ribs of a giant beast long dead, and the torches placed around its edge burned with blue fire that cast long shadows across the ground, making everything feel colder, older, and far more dangerous than any battlefield Elias had ever walked. The clan gathered above, their armor glowing faintly under the moonlight, their voices low with excitement and fear, because a human had never stood inside their sacred circle. A human had never been asked to survive the trials of honor, and none of them believed he would leave this place alive. Elias stood in the center with his breath steady, though pain throbbed through his ribs like a heartbeat made of knives, and blood still dried along his arm from the fight with the dread maw. But none of this showed in his eyes. His gaze was calm, quiet, unshaken, the kind of calm that came not from confidence, but from accepting that fear had no place in a heart that had already survived too much. Vena stood at the edge of the arena, gripping the railing so tightly her knuckles turned pale silver, her golden eyes trembling with a mixture of rage, sorrow, and helplessness, because every instinct inside her screamed to run to him, to stand beside him, to break the sacred traditions if that's what it took to protect him. But she knew if she stepped inside before the trials began, they would kill him immediately. The matriarch raised her hand, her cold voice echoing across the crater. 3 trials will decide his worth. Elias kept his gaze on Vena, the only anchor he had in this storm of alien eyes and ancient laws, and when she met his gaze, her breath caught, pain slicing through her chest like a blade. Elias, she whispered under her breath, her voice breaking. "You promised you wouldn't leave me." He gave her a faint, tired smile, one that carried more emotion than any words he could speak. The first challenger entered the circle, a towering alien warrior with muscle like stone and armor carved with battle scars. He approached with a heavy staff that crackled with electric energy, the ground humming when he struck it. The clan roared, the trial began, and Elias moved, not with strength but with speed, weaving through the warrior's attacks like a whisper of wind, his blade deflecting strikes with desperate precision, each movement costing him pain but earning him survival. He ducked under a sweeping blow, her with a quiet groan. His body finally surrendering to exhaustion, he could no longer fight. Vena caught him, her strong arms pulling him against her chest, her heart pounding violently under his head, and she shouted to the warriors, her voice shaking with both fury and fear, "Bring water, bring cloth, do not let him fade." The warriors rushed forward, but none dared stand too close, because the expression on Vena's face was no longer that of a huntress. It was something deeper, something protective, something claiming. She held Elias tightly, her fingers brushing his hair away from his forehead, her voice a broken whisper. "You cannot die, human, not you, not the one who fights beside me as if our spirits are one." Elias stirred faintly, his hand gripping hers with weak strength. "I'm not going anywhere," he murmured, his voice barely audible. "Not while you still need me." Vena closed her eyes, her breath trembling, her heart burning with a truth that terrified her. And as the forest quieted and the dying light painted the land in shades of gold and blood, she pressed her forehead to his and whispered the words she had never spoken to anyone in her life. "You are mine to protect now, Elias, and I will not let fate take you from me." The night wrapped around their camp like a wounded animal, restless and uneasy, as if the land itself sensed the danger creeping closer with every passing hour, and Vena sat beside Elias with her spear across her knees, her body tense, her heart refusing to calm even though he finally slept, his breath shallow but steady, his skin pale from blood loss yet warm against her touch. The alien warriors kept their distance, whispering among themselves with nervous eyes, because they all felt it too, the approaching presence, the silent march of something powerful and unforgiving moving through the forest toward them, and the closer it came, the heavier the air grew, pressing against their chests like an invisible hand. Elias stirred in his sleep, a soft groan escaping his throat, and Vena leaned closer, brushing her hand down his arm with rare tenderness that made even the shadows seem to pause. "Rest?" she whispered, her voice trembling with emotion she could no longer hide. "You fought the beast, now let me fight what comes next." But deep down she knew fighting what came next would not be easy, because this danger wasn't a creature, wasn't a storm, wasn't some wild force of nature. It was something far more complicated, something she had hoped to avoid but could no longer escape. The sound reached them first, a deep horn echoing through the trees, vibrating through the earth, sending birds scattering into the sky, and Vena's golden eyes hardened, her breath catching in her chest as she whispered a single word with dread, "My clan." The warriors around her bowed their heads in fear and respect, because the Huntress clans were feared across many worlds, known for strict traditions and merciless judgment, and if they discovered Vena's bond with a human, the consequences would not be gentle. She stood slowly, gripping her spear, her gaze fixed on the dark forest path as figures began to emerge from the shadows, tall and armored, their faces painted with the symbols of her people, their movements sharp and disciplined. At their front walked the clan matriarch, Elder Serac, a towering woman with silver skin marked by deep ceremonial scars, her eyes cold as winter storms as they locked onto Vena, and then drifted to Elias lying wounded on the ground. Her expression darkened instantly. "You have broken tradition," she said, her voice heavy with authority that made the warriors around her kneel without thought. "You let a human fight at your side, bleed at your side, survive at your side." Vena didn't bow, didn't kneel, didn't lower her head. Instead she stepped forward, shielding Elias with her body, her spear angled defensively, her voice fierce and unshaking. "He earned the right to stand with me." The elder's brow furrowed. "A human cannot earn such rights." Vena's voice rose, passion and anger burning through every word. Then you have forgotten what strength looks like. Gasps rippled through the warriors, shock freezing the air, because no huntress spoke to a matriarch like that. Yet Vayna didn't flinch, her stance unbroken, her heart refusing to step back. Elias opened his eyes slowly, pain flickering across his face, and when he saw the crowd standing before them, his hand instinctively reached for his blade. But Vayna pressed her palm gently to his chest. "Stay," she whispered. "I will not let them touch you." The elder stepped closer, her gaze burning with accusation. "Your instincts betrayed you, Vayna. They tied you to a human. They clouded your judgment." Vayna shook her head, her voice trembling but strong. "No, my instincts showed me truth, something you refused to see." She pointed to Elias, lying wounded yet watching everything. Rolled across the dirt and slashed the warrior's leg, sending him crashing to the ground. The crowd gasped, the matriarch narrowed her eyes, and Vayna exhaled with a shudder, her hands shaking as she whispered, "One." But the second challenger stepped in immediately, a female warrior with twin blades glowing with heat, her movements fast, fluid, deadly. She struck like fire dancing through darkness, and Elias barely kept up, stumbling more than once as pain tore through his injured ribs. But every time he faltered he saw Vayna's eyes, burning with fear and fierce belief, and that was enough to make him rise again. Their blades clashed with sparks, their breaths quick and sharp, until Elias found an opening, twisting behind her and disarming her with one final strike that sent her crashing to the ground. The clan roared again, louder this time, not with anger but with awe, because no human should have stood against two elite warriors and lived. Vayna's heart pounded against her ribs, her eyes burning with tears she refused to let fall. "Two," she whispered, her voice trembling. "Just one more, my human, just one more." The matriarch stepped forward slowly, the torches flickering as if reacting to her presence, and the moment she entered the arena, silence swallowed the entire crater. She was the final trial, the strongest of them all, the blade that had ended dozens of warriors in her youth, and the judge of traditions older than memory. Elias's breath tightened, but he didn't step back. He had faced creatures stronger than flesh, memories darker than night, and ghosts far heavier than any blade she carried. Still, the fight was brutal from the first heartbeat, her strikes relentless, her strength overwhelming, each heavy blow forcing Elias backward, his legs shaking from exhaustion, his vision blurring at the edges, his body struggling against the weight of pain. Vayna gripped the railing so hard it cracked under her fingers. "Stop," she whispered through clenched teeth. "Please stop." But the matriarch showed no mercy, her blade slicing through the air with deadly grace, and Elias blocked strike after strike until his arms went numb, until his breath tasted like blood, until his legs finally buckled and he fell to one knee. The clan leaned forward, waiting for the final blow, waiting for human blood to paint the ground. But Vayna leapt over the railing with a roar so raw it silenced the arena, landing between Elias and the matriarch, her spear raised, her body shaking not with fear but with fury. "Enough," she cried, her voice echoing into the night. "He has earned his place." The matriarch lowered her blade, her eyes narrowing. "You break tradition." "I honor it," Vayna growled, her voice breaking as she knelt beside Elias, her hand trembling as she touched his face. "A true hunter deserves legacy, strength deserves respect, and this human has both." Elias reached up weakly, his fingers brushing her wrist. "Vayna," he whispered, his voice barely a breath. "I'm still here." She leaned close, her forehead touching his, tears finally escaping her eyes. "You are mine," she whispered, "and I will fight anyone who tries to take you from me." The matriarch studied them in silence, the bond between them bright as flame, undeniable, ancient, powerful. And slowly, she lowered her weapon, turning to the clan. "The trials are complete," she declared, her voice deep and final. "The human stands." Shock rippled through the warriors, then slowly, one by one, they lowered their weapons in acceptance. Vayna helped Elias to his feet, her arm wrapped firmly around him, her breath warm against his ear as she whispered, "You lived, my hunter." Elias managed a small smile through the pain. "Because you were watching." And as the moon glowed above them and the clan bowed in respect neither of them expected, Vena's voice softened with a truth she could no longer hide. "Walk with me into tomorrow, Elias, human or not. You are the one destiny chose."